It'll be up on my YouTube channel, hopefully tomorrow, if not tonight. All right. What? The two folders. Again, compact flash card imitation. And the second one is this one right here, the 20191008. It's the bottom most of the ones that have been named properly. You good? It's not any of this. It's not any of that. And you guys, did everybody have that little cube at the bottom?
Just search, I don't have it, but I search class projects.
Okay. Then just do a search for class projects. Click on the little magnifying glass. Nope, magnifying glass. And do a search for class project. And that should be it right there. And put in, no, you got to put in your information. And down to Engelhard. Copy that first whole folder. Nope. Yep. And also copy the compact flash. It says they're already sitting out here. They're already out here. It looks like one of them is. Grab. Yeah.
It's making me upgrade to 11.3.
Because you have 11.3 on your computer, and you can say, or did you just launch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say upgrade. It's okay. Do you have 12 on here?
Yes.
Go to 12. So cancel out of this. Open 12 instead. I upgraded to 12 so that my screens all look like we might as well everybody to do the same thing. Yeah. And then you can either browse to or just say hit cancel on, yeah, or browse to, and then just you're launching that guy, and it's going to ask you to upgrade that.
And I should say it.
And say yes. I'll show you guys how to downgrade later. So Liz, I need you to get to those two sets of files that we had last time. Oh wait, they're there. It's just these two guys. That's all we're working with anyway. So you guys are good. These machines apparently didn't reset, or at least some of you guys already had stuff on there. So what I'd like to do before we actually start working back into Capture One is take a look at some of the stuff that got turned in. I've actually finally caught up with most, if not all, of my grading. So I just want to go through a couple of things here to make sure everybody's on board and understands. So I don't know if the rest of you heard, but I did upgrade to version 12. So my screen will, it's the latest, greatest, which is, I have mixed feelings about, just to be honest with you. They've changed a number of things that I'm not, well, it's like anything. I'm sure eventually it'll be for the better, but for their time being right now, it's driving me nuts. So Maddie, these were turned in as Photoshop files, which was okay because they had, you were doing smart object workflow, which was fine. So I could get to your raw data. That part was great, but the files are 7 times as big as they need to be. So just next time, it's okay. I'm just saying just next time turn in, but it was easy to look at everybody else's. So that part didn't matter. I'm going to start with ones that were actually done correctly. So you can see this is one of Chelsea right here. And I am, Chelsea, listen to me. Kelsey here, thank you. And if I'm hovering over here, again, I simply come in, do a color balance on this guy, come down and check the white value, and you see it's reading at it at 251. I realize that the difference in a 250 and a 251 is really minuscule, so I didn't spank you guys too hard for that. But again, just it's as long as you're going to be a stickler for it, be a stickler for it. So this part was done exactly the way it should have been. Again, this is the light you can see is directly onto her. The card is oriented right. There's no glare on the card. When she goes to the side like this, you can see that they've brung the camera around to the side as well. And this card is still now in effect straight onto her, or straight onto the camera and to the light both. So even though they're not going to shoot it this way, this is a side light now. They are metering it. They are using the card and the orientation of the camera to meter this thing, to use this in the correct way. Does that make sense to everyone? Is anybody unclear about that part? So again, this is not how they're going to shoot it, but this is how they need to actually determine if the exposure of the light is correct. And then once this, which is correct, again, zooming in, color balance here, read the white patch reading, 249. It's exactly the range we want to be in. Once they've got that established correctly, and again, no glare on the card, then they can come right back around to the reframing part where this actually appears to be a side light, and they'll be good to go. So that part was done great. And then finally, the last one. Complete side light now, but again, they've reoriented the camera to still essentially be right underneath the light to get the card flat into the light. Again, there's no glare on the card. I'm going to double click to come in on this guy one last time, click on the color balance right here and read again, and it's at a 250. So these were done exactly the way they should have been done, with the exception of that first one was a single point too hot. So that part worked out well. This did not work out well. It starts out just fine here, so I'm not going to do, because that's a set of Photoshop files, but I'm going to do another set of them right here. So these are the CR2 files. I'm going to zip in here again. I'm going to color balance here, measure this. It's a 244, which again, I realize is only a single point away from the range that we're looking for, that 245. But those things, you know, again, I'm not spanking anybody too hard because this is shockingly close. But just to reiterate that, take the extra 5 seconds it would take to actually make this perfect. So this one was done fine. I have, again, no issue with this. Flat into the light, no glare on the card. The orientation part is great. But this is where people start getting into trouble. This is now still flat. And as far as the camera part goes, but this is not flat into the light. Light has now been moved considerably to the left-hand side. And even though people will try to cheat the card a little bit to sort of like get it in there, that kind of stuff, it's still not a legitimate reading, no more so than if you had the dome of an incident meter pointed straight at the camera, which you would never do. You're always pointing that dome at the light. This is the same sort of relationship that you've got to respect. So again, it would be up to them to do exactly what happened with the first group, in that they came over essentially underneath the light. The card was flat into the light and got that reading. So anyway, that's bad, but this is worse. Because again, there is simply zero way that this is going to give you a legitimate reading on that. There's simply no way to do it. If you had no other way to actually, if you couldn't move the camera for some reason, I don't know, Jesus was sitting there blocking you and you couldn't come around, is there another way you could actually check to see if this exposure was okay? The highlight on what? Can you be more specific? Okay, so the highlight of her, okay, and something like this, is this what you'd be looking for? And what else would you be looking for? So I'm here now, what do I do here? The red channel, and what should the red channel be? No. Anyone else? Exactly, 225 to 245, in that range up in there. So yeah, because you wouldn't want that to really actually be white patch, but that's where that wouldn't be the range. And to sort of see what that looks like, if I go back to Kelsey here really quickly, we'll do one that's a little bit more flat on. Again, this was, I know because I looked at this and this was okay in here. And if I take a look at a highlight on her in this range right in here, and I'm reading, that's a red up in the 254, so that's almost telling me I'm too hot in here. 250, possibly too hot in this. We'll see what another trick looks like right here. I'm going to check my preferences in this to make sure that my warning is not at 255, but it's at 250. And then I can throw on the warning part here, and you can see that there's highlights on her that are actually blowing out. And I'm also looking probably down here a little bit on her sweater, and there's issue down here. I would take a look at that. It's got other tone in here, and that's why it's blowing out, so I don't really need to worry about that part. This might make me a little bit nervous right here. I think part of it's also a little bit out of focus, but I might consider, with that information, the two of those put together, dropping this down a third of a stop. Does that sort of make sense to you guys? Okay, and that was pretty much, yeah, everybody. The rest of this stuff, you guys actually got this part. The last group got the same thing as correct as well. So again, you can see they're coming around to the side to keep that flat, that light flat on. But they actually shot both, which I thought, this sort of shows you exactly the way to consider doing this part right here. You're using the card to meter for this, but this is the shot you're ultimately going to do. We good on this part? All right. Wow, it's just that fast that I dismiss your work. That was kind of a joke. Everybody seems tired this morning. Yeah. Okay. Again, let me go down to the raw files instead. So in this case, I'm taking a look at this. This was the high-speed stuff. You can see this is up at a 1600th of a second. I'm actually going to, again, white balance here. Take a look at my meter reading. Is this correct? Anyone? What's wrong? Right, so is that correct? God, you guys really think I am baiting you all the time, don't you? It's fine. This is exactly what it should be, 245 to 250, right? So this is exactly where it needs to be. Everything's good here. Is there glare on the card? No, there's no glare on the card. So this part's actually done really well. If we go to the next one down and take a look at this, this is actually the, so the first one that we looked at up here, this was the high speed, the hypersync that was actually done using the Flex 5. And then this down here is not. This is actually using the medium format leaf shutter lens. And again, you can see it's just a slight touch too hot at a 251. But again, what I would do is look at this as well with a warning on here and see if actually, yeah, that's blowing out. That's giving me a 253 up in the red channel for the highlight. So again, this is probably indicating I should drop this down about a third of a stop, but close enough for government work. And the rest of you guys actually did that whole part pretty well. So were there any questions about that whole high-speed options? It's a real game changer, especially if you are hand-holding in the studio. Most of you guys are not going to want to hand-hold that medium format, but if you are hand-holding a Canon and you can shoot in the studio at an 8,000th of a second, your images will be so sharp, they will hurt, especially if you use a decent lens. So just something to consider moving onto. It changes everything. Okay, one last thing to look at, and then we're going to jump into Capture One. I say one thing, last thing to look at. What else did you guys do? This may be the exact same thing we just looked at. Yeah, this is exactly the same thing we just looked at, or we have looked at this. Right? Am I missing something? Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. So with that said, I need everybody into Capture 112. Again, I'm on 12 now so that my screen looks the same as your screen looks. And we are going to go back. So I'm going to sort of start. We only just barely got into things last week, so I'm sort of going to kind of start from scratch here in a way. So to get to the screen, if you don't have anything showing up right now, that part's fine. If you get a window that opens up asking you if you want to open up another session, you can say cancel to that. You don't need to worry about that. I'm going to show you various ways to launch sessions. But I want everybody to start in the same place. And so to do that, I'm going to ask you to come up to the window menu and come down to Workspace and then come down to Default. So again, take a look at my screen if you don't know where I'm at. Up to the window menu, down to Workspace, and down to Default, and say OK to that. And that will actually bring Capture One into what it considers to be its more generalized default workspace. So this is where I need everybody to kind of be and to begin with. And then if you take a look up at the very top of the screen, there is, well, at the very top, there's a series of menus, you know, the file edit, image adjustment, whatever. Those are up at the very top. Underneath that is a toolbar. We'll talk about the toolbar and modifying the toolbar in just a little bit. This guy right here. And then underneath that, on the left-hand side, right over here, are a series of icons. These are actually called tool tabs, and what they are is they are collections of tools. So if you click on the very first one, this is actually the library tool, you'll see there's a little drop-down menu right here that says library. If you click on the next tool tab over, this is the camera tool tab, and you will see that there's another set of tools in here. So these things are tabs, which are collections of tools. The things that are inside of them are the tools themselves. So this exposure evaluation is a tool. This next capture naming little palette is a tool. The next capture adjustment, all of these small little things in here are individual tools that you can add, subtract, you can move them around, you can change everything. You can actually do the same thing with the tool collections themselves, the tool tabs. The next one over that looks like a lens is all for lens correction, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that's everything that's going on up here. If you go back to the library tool tab to begin with, there's a couple of things that we can take a look at in here in terms of navigation, and that's what this whole thing is about. The library is designed to help you build and deal with your collections, with your shootings, with your sessions, with the whole 9 yards. That's what's actually going on here. To get to the session that I want you guys to open, to deal with, there's a number of ways of doing it, but one of them is to actually navigate to it through this window right here. So if you take a look at the very top, you should have, and it just depends on whether you've clicked on the little triangles for these things to open. At the very top, underneath library, you should see something that says session folders, and it has got a little triangle next to it that allows this to collapse. Underneath that, you should have a capture, selects, output, and trash folder. Does everybody have something that looks like this? Anybody not? Okay, underneath that is a thing called session albums. We're going to get to that later. Session favorites is underneath that. We'll get to that later. And then finally under that is system folders. I need everybody to get to system folders. If you get to system folders and actually use its little menu to do a drop down, you will see that what this is really, just all this thing is it is a way for you to navigate your computer. And all this is again, if you take a look on mine, if you open up system folders, underneath mine, I've got what's called my boot MPB13. That, in your case, is probably saying Macintosh HD. It's just your computer on your hard drive. If you look down underneath that, you'll see in my case, I've still got my server is actually, I'm attached to that server. Class projects is actually down here. And then finally, underneath all of that is my home folder right here. Versor. So in the case of me and in the case of you guys, you need to come down. In yours, because of these computers that you're on, the user is Studio. So do you guys see a folder that says Studio? All right, so click on that little drop-down arrow to open that up, and you will see this is all the stuff that is associated with that user, including the desktop. So if you guys click and open up your desktop, because that's where I ask you to copy those folders. You should be able to go in there and find that 20191008. Can everybody find that part? Now, in my case, mine's not on my desktop. Mine is actually in my Pictures folder, so I'm going to navigate to that instead. So I'm going to click on Pictures folder, and again, I'm going to go down to the bottom of mine, and this is the one that I'm looking for right here. This 201008_CCC com demo. That's the one I need you guys to find. If you click on that to open it up, you will go in and you'll actually see that there is a capture folder here. I'm going to click on this on this folder right here. If you click on the capture folder itself, it should show you at least some of the captures on your thumbnails. Does that work for everyone? The problem I've got with this is that it's not really loading this session. I just want you to point out that this exists right here. Because the advantage of this is that you can actually, let's say for instance you're working in one session and you would like to copy some of your images somewhere else on your computer. You can do it inside of Capture One. You don't have to actually go outside and do it. But in our case, what I'd like to do here is actually load this as a session. And to do that, I want to get to it in the Finder really quick. The shortcut to get to it is, again, if you click on the capture folder, if you hold down the, so for me, this is what I do for a right mouse click. If you have a mouse and it's got a 2-button mouse and you can do a right click with your mouse, go ahead and do a right click for that. If you're on a tablet and you know how to do the 2-finger swipe to actually get a right click, you can do that. If you're like me and you're old school, you hold down the control key and you click and you will get a drop down menu. So all I'm doing is holding down the control key and clicking once, and you'll see I get this drop down menu. And when you get to that, you can come down here and say, show this to me in the Finder. When you do that, it will take you to that session in the Finder. So I need everybody to get out to that session. Everybody there? So then if you take a look here, I'm in the session. It picked my capture folder right here, but sitting right above my session, sitting right up here, you will see there is what is called the preference for the session. It's this thing that's sitting up at the top. It's got the very same name in it, but it's also got this, after the com demo, it's a .coesssion.db. This is the preference for the entire session. This is how you actually launch. This is one way that you can launch sessions into Capture One. So I need everybody to double click on that guy and it will launch and it will bring the entire session into Capture One. It'll zip back up to the top and you can see now your capture folder is active. You will also notice in this little drop down menu right here, it lists that session that you just opened. So does everybody have this, does anybody not have this session open? Yes. If it's asking you to upgrade, go ahead and say OK. The original session that I gave to you guys was built in Capture One 11, but because we're in 12 right now, it's actually going to change the preference. It doesn't change your captures, but it will change that preference file. So is everybody good on this part?
You just selected on the folder.
Say what?
I'm sorry, I got lost for a second. Up there. Above the yeah. Yeah, I clicked that and then it's like.
No? Do it again, see what happens. Can it be open? Is read only. Are you running this off the server?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Isn't it on here? So this is the one you want. Everybody else is open, right? Okay. So there's another way to actually get to that part, to load other separate sessions, and that's to go up to the File menu. So everybody up to the File menu, come down to Open. If you click on that, it does it just like it does in every Macintosh or in Windows program. It'll take you, you'll get a dialog box, you'll actually navigate to it. So again, in my case, I'm going to navigate to Pictures. I'm going to navigate to that folder again. And the thing that you want to open again is the preference for that session. You don't want to try to open these captures. This is meaningless. You won't even be able to available to you. It's always the the preference for the session that you guys open up. Everybody good on that part? All right, so we can hit cancel out of that. So now that we've got this guy open, we need to talk about what sessions are and how to build them and everything else. So let me ask you this really quickly. How many people are really brand new to Capture One? Okay, no, that's fine. So it just lets me know how. Okay, so the first conversation that we need to have are, there's two options of working in Capture One. One option is a session, one option is a catalog, and they are two completely different things. Sessions are designed to be all about single sets of shooting, single sets of images. So for instance, whenever I'm working for a client, so let's say for instance I've got a day booking for Neiman Marcus and I go in to shoot for them that day. I build a session for that day. The next day, let's say I go to work for Bonwit Teller or I go to work for Lord & Taylor. I don't want to mix those two files together. So I have on Monday, I have a session for Neiman Marcus. On Tuesday, I've got a session for Lord & Taylor, and the two are completely separate to one another. They're not connected, they're not related at all. And that is the way I want to manage it, because I'm not trying to mix client files together. I want to keep that stuff separate. For people who do weddings, you do one wedding on Saturday, you do a different one on Sunday. You don't want to put that all together. So that's what sessions are all about. They are individual, they're designed. Now, that doesn't mean that every day has to be an individual session. I can actually get hired to shoot for an entire week for Neiman Marcus, and if it's all connected, then I will put that all in a single session. But again, the minute I work for another client the next day or the next week, whatever, I would go to a separate session. Catalogs are completely different. Catalogs are very much like Lightroom, and in Lightroom, that sense, all of your files go into it. It doesn't matter, everything gets lumped into it. And it ends up just being a gigantic collection of your images that has very strong database tools that you can then sort stuff. So, for instance, if you were still shooting for both clients and you somehow made the mistake of mixing it all together into a catalog, you could use all the search tools in there to actually separate the stuff back out. But it's just more difficult to do. Does that make sense, everyone? The other thing I will tell you is that Capture One has worked really hard at trying to get their catalog stuff to work well. Most of the people I know still, if they need a catalog function, they work in Lightroom. It's easier. It's it's as robust. There's some glitchy things about the catalog setup. Now, that being said, I'm talking about up through Capture One 11. I don't know how Capture One 12 is working right now. It's something that I'll be looking into and get back to you guys before this class ends. But in our case, I am going to strongly suggest to you, do not work in catalogs. There are people who will do both. There are people who will work in sessions to keep the stuff separated out, and then they will also work, they will import those same images into a catalog so that it is so that they're able to actually search the entire collection of work. So let's say, for instance, this was something you would start out working in sessions if you had a client, a group of clients that you're working for, but then you wanted to be able to actually search across all of your sessions. You can import all of that into a catalog that would allow you to search for everything within that. But again, from my position, my point of view, whatever, at the very least, I would always start out with sessions. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, pet peeve number one. Come up to the File menu and click on the File menu, and you will see at the top it says New Catalog followed by a new session. However, I'm not going to ask you to build one there. If you come down here to the little plus that's sitting right next to the session drop-down menu, you will actually see that you have new session and new catalog. So I'm just a UI kind of guy, and it drives me crazy. Why on earth do they have new session first here followed by new catalog, whereas up in the File menu they do the exact opposite? That to me is poor design. That's the first thing, whoever did that, I would fire their ass so fast. Anyway, regardless of how you get there, which one you pick, I want everybody to actually do a new session. Now, last week, before we actually get in and name this thing, last week, did we talk about creating a separate user that would just be called Capture One? Okay, one of the things that I'm going to jump at, I don't want you to build a new session yet, but I do want you to know, because this is one of the advantages to all of this. In your case, when you guys logged in on these computers, was there more than one user? Yeah, there was more than one user. Then that'll actually build this for you. If you have never built a second user, you're not going to have this. But if you have got more than one user, so for instance, if you've got the way that your computer was actually set up, and you actually added the Capture One, the additional Capture One user, you're going to have this. And this is what I need you to try to get to. So go back out to your Finder, and I need you to actually bring up a new window. I don't know if you guys can get there. I'm going to show this to you on mine. I'm going to bring up a new window on mine. You need to get to, when you get a new window, on this side over here, do you actually, as you come down, do you have list of devices here? No, you don't. If you come up to the Finder menu itself and you come down to Preferences, are you allowed to enable hard disks? No? So these computers are locked down. You can't do that. So I need you to just simply watch up on my screen and you'll actually see what's going on. It's got hard disks right here. But this is what you will have when you get to that. So I'm going to click on my boot drive right here. And I'm going to actually do this. Can you do a search for users and get to your user folder? I need the general overall users folder. So when you do that, do you get to one? Let's see what you got. No, not that. Do your search again. And come down to users, just the folder that says users. That's perfect, stay right there. So did you guys get to that? The thing that just says users? So if you click, what?
I have no idea. I know, I'm blanking, but like, you know, like the boot drive or whatever that pops up?
Right.
That doesn't usually pop up?
Yeah. And yours can't pop up. We can't change it on this to get it to pop up. So just do a search for user and say OK. And then you want to click on the thing that actually says go back up again. Oh, you were almost there, I think. No, go back up. All right, let's go back down. You don't want users and groups. Go back down, scroll down. Stop. That right there that says user. It's just giving you a definition. Go back up again. You don't have. That is so bizarre.
Right?
Yeah.
What's wrong with my computer?
So it's going to be here in the folder setup. So, but I don't. It's not that. I'm just looking down through that. It's not. It's none of these user presets. No, scroll down more and let's see what other folders are there. You can't find it there. So you're just going to have to watch this. All right. So, but everybody else got to their user folder, right? So take a look inside. You see this user here called shared. You cannot create this yourself. You can't build this yourself. This is the only, and if you don't have more than one user, which Juliana, I think that may be what's going on with yours. I think you have just a single user. So this is not going to exist. But the minute you create a second user, this exists. And the reason that this is important to you, this is critical to the stuff that you guys are going to do going out in the real world, because what this is this is a folder that has no permissions attached to it. So the problem that you are going to have working in a big studio situation where there's multiple computers, multiple people are logging on, that kind of stuff, is that you do a session. So for instance, if I do a session right now and I'm in the Verser user, which is what I am in right now, and I go ahead and drop my pictures into my Verser picture folder, that kind of stuff, anybody who logs onto the network who can actually see my computer can't access that stuff because they have no permissions. They would need my password and my login information to actually be able to get to those pictures, to see them, to copy those pictures. If I did copy them and put them on a hard drive, it might be tagged with a whole set of permission errors. I mean, not errors, but permission issues, which prohibits them from doing anything. They can't see the stuff, they can't edit the stuff, they can't do anything with it. And that is hugely problematic. And if that happens to you, and then all of a sudden you jump on an airplane and you go to Paris, and you leave a studio behind that cannot access their work, you will never work for those people ever again. They will send you the nastiest emails in the world and they won't pay you. So instead, you actually save all of your stuff to this shared user, because the shared user has no permissions and anyone can access that from anywhere. So anyone who can get onto the network can get to this user partition called shared. And again, you can't build this. If you go into users, you create a new user and you name it shared, it will not have the benefits that this thing has. This is built purely because you created more than one user. Does that make sense? So for me, when I work in Capture One back in here, regardless of what my user is, I am going to create a new session right now. Instead, for me, and we're going to name a session, so we're going to start, I'll show you right here. In the location that I'm going to do this in, I'm going to click on this menu to open this guy up. I am then going to navigate to my boot. Again, your case, it would be Macintosh HD. I'm going to click on Users, and I'm going to click on Shared, and this is where I'm actually going to drop all of my sessions, because if I do, anybody who has access to my network can actually get to these pictures. Yes?
Should we be doing this every time?
Yes. So, then it gets down. Again, yours is just going to be Macintosh HD, but because they have shut down the ability to see those drives on this, you don't see it. But you could try again. When you get here, click in your search box up here and again, do another search for user. You should be able to find that user shared part again. So again, I'm going to show you where mine is really quick. So I am in my boot drive, which again for you guys is called Macintosh HD. You're not going to see that part. But when you did a search up here for user, did you get your user folder? You did? If you click on your user folder, click on shared, this is where you want to keep your files. This is where you want to keep your sessions. Does this make sense? All right, so again, I'm going to go ahead and choose that. What are we going to call our session? Naming convention. Who in here has not gone through my naming convention madness? All of you have, right? That was the first day in here. So what are we going to call this file right now? 2019 19 Not yet. Underscore. CCC, what does that stand for? Okay, then that's the creator code, right? I could also, if this was for me, I could also call this, or the client code. If I was shooting for Lord and Taylor, what would this be? I'm sorry? I actually do just the first 3 letters of everything, because you can get names that are really, really long, so I would do LOR. If it was Neiman Marcus, what would I be? NEI, no M, NEI. If I was doing General Motors, what would it be? GEN. If I was doing United Airlines, UNI. If I was doing Caterpillar, CAT. Does this, everybody make sense on this? Underscore. What's the next thing? Keywords, right? And so what's my keyword for today? Again, this is another demo that we're going to do. I'm sorry, what? You could call this demo, or we could call this C1P demo, right? Why don't we try that? So C1P, Capture One Pro, demo, D-E-M-O. And at this stage of the game, I actually copy this thing. So I'm going to drag across this and copy it, because if I ever need to name something else again and I want to make sure the name is exactly the same, I got this on my clipboard. I don't need to worry about it. Make sense, everyone? Are we good on this part? Okay, so then I'm going to leave the rest of this at its default. However, you okay there?
It's just funny that I still can't even see you in class. So I was just asking her what you wrote. 'Cause I'm not scripting.
Oh, for this part up here? This is like the worst projector in the history of mankind. No, and I keep thinking it's like out of focus, and it's not. It's just a really shitty projector. I'm going to trade, maybe during the break, I'll trade this out for a different one. Yeah, right? However, the next most important thing about this, again, I am stepping you guys through this baby steps, but you've got to focus on this shit, because there's so much in this that can blow up in your face, and this is one of them right here. This thing that says open a new window, if you open a new window, it'll actually open it up. You can have multiple windows, you can have multiple sessions open in Capture One. But the downside to that, the tricky side to that, is that if you have a camera attached to one session and you open another session and you click on this open in new window, your original session that had the camera connected to it will continue to keep that connection. It will not let it go. And so you will have a new session open and you will never be able to connect to your camera ever, no matter what you do. That's a problem. So to fix that, you never check this open in new window. So you will never have multiple sessions open and you will never have that problem. But I have seen people tear their hair out. I've seen people get new computers. I've seen people trade in their cameras and get new cameras and new tether cords. And it is a world of hurt because they left that thing checked. And there's a session sitting right behind it that their camera's connected to. So anyway, do not check that. And then finally say, okay. And it will build a new session. You'll notice now we have absolutely no files in our collection right here because there are no files. We don't have anything. We haven't shot anything in here. To get back to the session that we actually had open before, simply go back up to this little drop-down menu and you will see that it should have sessions. It should list. It should remember the sessions that you're actually doing. So you can come down to the session right before, the one that was the 1008 one, and click on that, and it will take you back to this session that we were starting with. It's actually got my lighting demo in it. Is everybody good on this part? All right, so let's leave the one that's got the lighting demo in it right now. I just want to make sure that everybody knew about that part. Okay, so in the Tool tab part that sits up here, again, we've gone through some of this part. We're going to get more into the lower part down here in just a second. But I want to have a quick conversation about the Tool tabs that sit up here, because these things are adjustable, movable, changeable, all of those sorts of things. Yes? It says what?
Specify a valid name for the new session.
Then it doesn't sound like you actually named the session the way we named the session. You're in shared file. So go ahead and hit OK. Let me see what it says. Click OK. What on earth could be causing that? Let's see, put yours in a different place. Click on the drop down here. Let's see what happens if you put it just into Pictures folder. So go back to, scroll down. No, it's not, it's none of this stuff. Yeah. Click on this drop down. I need to see where this is. Yeah, you're good there. Go ahead and try that. And then say OK. I have no idea what that means. Then just kill that last part. Try that. No, it's none of that.
Oh, this is weird.
Yeah, this is totally weird. Just start the whole name over and just call it test. I have no idea why, but you can work in test.
Okay.
Because you're going to just go right back to the folder that we did earlier. Okay, so up here at the top are these tool tabs. However, there's stuff in here that you maybe do need, that you maybe don't need, that you maybe want to actually modify. So what I'd like to do is actually show you a couple of things around here. So for instance, there's a lot of stuff that's sitting up here that is designed for processing only. So if you start to come across and you look at the top, the way most people will set up their workspaces is they'll do it for different tasks. So the first one I want to set up is a space that we're only going to use to actually do the capture part. So to do that, if you click on the first tab, this is your organization, the library. You definitely need that when you're capturing. If you click on the next tab over, you'll actually see this is the camera tab. We also need that one as we're going over. If you click on the next one over, this is the lens tab, and this has to do more here. If you look at this purple fringing, rotation and flip, that kind of stuff, some of this could be considered to actually use for in terms of capture parts. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. The next one actually over, if we click on it, it's the one that looks like the sort of the Olympic rings here. This has actually got some things in here. This is this is a color editor here. Let me see what they actually call it. If you hover over this guy, you'll see it gets a drop down and it'll tell you what it is. This is actually color in here. However, there's a number of things that are in here that are designed primarily for processing. However, there's a couple of things in here that I actually want to have for myself. However, I don't want this entire menu. This thing called base characteristics we're going to keep. The thing called white balance we're going to actually keep. But right now, for the most part, histogram I don't need, layers I don't need, this other stuff right down in here I don't need, this part right here. I don't care about those guys right now. So you can eliminate this tool tab. To do that, hover over the tool tab itself, hold down the control key or whatever you use to get your 2-button mouse, and click, and you will get a drop-down menu here. And in this case, you have these 5 options. The first one is to actually add a tool. Now, adding tools, these are the things that are sitting inside this tool tab. That's not what we want to do. You can also remove tools. You'll see when you go to remove tool, it lists all the tools that are sitting in here. So you can see histogram is at the top. That's what it is at the top of this guy. The next thing down is layer. So these things are modifiable. But in my case, I want to get rid of the tool tab itself entirely. So if I click on remove tool tab, you will see I get a drop down menu here. This lists all the tool tabs that I currently have running here. And then finally, the very last option in this is to remove this specific tab. So you could either click on this or you could click on it right here. Either way, it'll do the same thing, but I'm going to click on it to remove the tab. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm going to say, yes, I want to do that. My next tool over is the exposure tool. You'll see I've got a couple of things in here that were redundant for that color one. So I'm going to leave the exposure one here for the time being. The next one over, if you click on this, this is actually a way that you can navigate. It's a way to check focus. It's a way to check a couple of other things in here. It's got film grain, spot removal on this. Again, this is a tool that I don't need. The one thing I need in here for focus, I'm going to actually add it by itself. So again, I'm going to hold down just do your right-click mouse to actually get rid of the Details tab and say OK. The next one that's actually over, if we click on this, this has got styles in here. This one I'm going to keep just for a second, and I'll show you why in just a minute. The next one over is where you can do keywording and metadata. Again, for your capture part, you probably do want to keep this part. Then the next one over is actually the process tab. You definitely want to keep this open. And then finally, we get to the process queue. And what the process queue is about is if you decide you're going to process 50 files, it'll line up here and you can actually process, you can pause the queue, you can actually change the order of your queue, you can delete things that are in the queue. It's just a way for you to manage that. What's not in here that I would like to add, though, are two possibilities. So if you come over to the area that's on the far right side, again, of this tool tab area, click to hold down to however you get your right-click mouse, click on this. We are going to add a tool tab, and the one that I'm going to add here at the bottom is black and white. How many people know that you could had a black and white tool tab in Capture One? If you click on this, you will actually get a black and white tool tab. If you come over to your images over here right now on their thumbnails, I'm going to click on the first one that actually shows you the entire image right here. When you've got this black and white tool tab up, if you look down here at the bottom, there is a black and white tool. If you click on this to open it up, you can click on Enable Black and White. This is how you give clients a preview of their images in black and white. And if the destination for their shooting is black and white, they're going to want to see their captures in black and white. Now, this is just showing it to you in black and white. I didn't change this into a black and white. It's just giving you the illusion of black and white. If you uncheck this, you see we go right back to color. So you will never capture, unless you're using a very specific kind of camera that will capture only in black and white, you will never do that, but you can actually have the illusion of it. And that becomes important, especially if you're actually trying to see how tone either separates or doesn't separate in an image, issues like that. Does this make sense to everyone? So this black and white tab becomes pretty critical to actually have on there, so I keep it as part of that. And then finally, there's a last one over here. If again, I'm going to go just to the side of the black and white part. If you get on your right-click mouse, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add another tool tab, and it's the one down at the very bottom, Custom Tool tab. If you click on this, it'll actually open up a tool, a space for you, and you can name this thing anything you want. I'm going to name it after myself. I'm going to call it Verser. You can name it anything you want, and I'm going to go ahead and say, if you click over here to the right side of it and click on Icon, you can pick all these different icons, and since I am a star, that's the one that I'm going to pick. And then I'm going to actually click on Add Tool tab, and you see now you've got a clean slate that you can add anything you want to, so you can build your own menu to do anything you want. So why on earth would you want to do that? Well, there's a lot of people who work only in camera, only with a library, and they want I don't know, a processing tool, or they want a focus check or something like that. So we can build that menu right here. So to do that, come into this blank space, hold down the Control key, click once, and come to Add Tool. You can add any of these tools that are sitting right here. So I'm going to come down and add Library, and it's sitting right here. I'm going to hover underneath this, hold down the Control key, click. Collapse this so that you can get underneath it into a blank area underneath it. I'm going to click, I'm going to go up here to the top. We'll do it out of here as well. Oh, I'm sorry. It's back up to the icon itself, not this area down here. So back up to this icon itself. Hold down the Control key, click. We're going to add another tool, and I'm going to say Add Camera. And now my camera attachment is sitting right down here. I'm going to collapse that. You can change the order of these things. So for instance, you can grab Camera and drag it up above Library, and it'll sit up here at the very top. And now when you open it up, your camera part will be right here. I'm going to come up and add another tool. Again, I'm going to hold down the Control key and click on this. This tool, I'm going to add the Focus tool. And the Focus tool is now sitting underneath the Library. Let's say I don't want it there. Let's say I want it up above underneath my camera part. So you can see you can customize all of these things any way you want. Does this make sense to everyone? Okay, I don't really want to use this in my custom part. You can, but I'm going to get rid of it for right now. So again, click on the Control key. I'm going to remove the Verser tab. I'm going to say OK to that, but I am going to go back to my tool over to the camera one. So there's a number of things in here in this camera one that matters to us that would help for us to be able to see the whole time. And so the first thing, and this is something I think we did last time, I'm going to get rid of exposure evaluation. I use that color card. I don't use this at all. So this is just taking up room. I don't want it. So I'm going to come over to the little three dots right there, and I'm going to click on Remove Tool. Then I'm going to go to next capture naming. I do want to keep that part, but there's a problem with this. In your next capture naming, what do you guys see in terms of format? Is anybody even listening? Anybody on this page? What? Three-digit counter. So this has been changed. Finally, they have done this for as the default. In every version of Capture One up to this point, this was name underscore camera counter. And camera counter is using the number of times the shutter in your camera has fired as a number. And the problem with that is that the count only goes up to 10,000 and then it resets. So conceivably, that's, if you use camera counter, it can start to rename your files. And if you don't know any better, it'll actually overwrite your old files that had the same name. Worse, it'll actually start your series in the very middle of something. So if you've got 5,682 captures on your camera that you've done, your series starts at 5,678. Again, not a good thing. So you can change this though. To actually change this, if you click on the little 3 dots that are sitting right next to it, it'll open up a naming format window. This becomes critical to us because this is what we use for setting up sessions, for doing automatic naming. This is also the window that you'll get to do renaming, and this is also the one that you're going to get to do importing. Are we good on this part? To change this, they call these things icons down here. That's what is basically going, or what they are tokens. That's what they call these guys. You can change them. You can change, so this thing that's sitting up here at the top, we can modify this. So for instance, if you click right next to that 3-digit counter and delete it, it's gone. Then you could come down here and say, I can put in something else. I'm going to actually put in a creator name. So you can grab this creator token, bring it up to the top, and let go, and it will actually put it in place. However, I don't really want to do that. I'm going to, again, click on the outside to get rid of creator. You can type directly into this guy. So for instance, if you don't like underscores, if you prefer dashes, you can click backspace to get rid of the underscore and then simply type in a dash and it will put that in instead. For me, I personally prefer the underscore, so I'm going to get rid of the dash. I'm going to type in an underscore, and then I'm going to come down here to the thing that says 1-digit counter. It's always the topmost one. I'm going to click on this guy, and I'm going to drag it back into here and let go like that. And then you click on its drop-down menu here, and you pick 3-digit counter. Makes sense? And then say OK. Now when you do that, you will actually get a sample readout that sits right down here at the bottom, and this happens all the time. When you guys look at your sample readout, what is the frame number that you've got? What does your 3-digit count number say? 20. Is that where you want to start? Well, in this case, because I've already got 19 images in here, it actually counts that. It knows I've already got 19 in here. So it will know that 20 is where I want to go. However, if we go to a new session, it keeps this number. This number gets stuck in here. So if you wanted to start over at number 1, which you probably do when you go to another shooting, you come up again to this same 3 little drop-down menu, and you come down and you say reset capture counter. And in this case, you will see that it's now reading, this sample here is live to us. And it matters. You should always be looking at this guy. So it's 001 is sitting right in here. Does that make sense, everyone? However, if I now shot a frame, it would overwrite my 001 at the very top. This first frame up here, they would have the same name. So it's going to overwrite that file. That's not what I want it to do. So instead, go back to that same little 3 dots. And you can, the 3 dots that are at the top, not the ones that are next to the name format, but at the top. And come down to set capture counter. And in set capture counter, you can type 20 back in, which is what we would want to do for this guy, and say OK to that. And you'll notice we've got our preview down. The next frame that I do will be number 20, and my stuff will be in order. Does this make sense to everyone? So there's a weird thing that happens up in here as well, and it has to do with this capture counter increment. So I need everybody to come in here and click on capture counter increment, and a window will open up. And you'll see in here that it actually says the desired counter value. And in my case, it's 1 right now. And what that means is that the next frame that I shoot will be frame number 20. And the one I shoot after it will be frame number 21. And the one after it will be frame number 22. And everybody in the world thinks that, well, that's how it should always be, right? That's how you always want it. It's not how you always want it. So I need everybody to, this is my scenario, because I actually had to do this once. When I was working at Playboy, I had we got a hold of a whole set of Peter Beard's diaries, and they were hundreds, if not thousands of pages long, and they were all visual. He had painted on pages, he'd cut out a bunch of Polaroids on pages. They were these incredible things, right? And I was supposed to photograph them. So I need everybody to imagine, let's imagine this is the diary right here, right? So I'm gonna photograph this thing, but I have got literally 2,000-3,000 pages to photograph. So this is my choice, right? I'm gonna get my camera on a tripod, and it's gonna be focused right over here on page number 1, and I'm gonna take the picture, ka-chung, and that's great. But then I turn the page to go to page number 2, and I have to move my camera over this part to take page number 2, ka-chunk. And then I move my camera back over here to page number 3 and line that up, take this picture, ka-chunk. Do you really want to do that for 2,000, 3,000 pages? No. So I'm going to go back to my page number 1, get my camera focused on it, page number 1, ka-chunk. But instead of having this be an increment of 1, I set it as an increment of 2. And now what will happen is I will go over to here. This will now shoot. It won't be page number 2. It'll be page number 3. Ka-chunk. I never have to move my camera. Page 5. Ka-chunk. Page 7. Ka-chunk. Does this make sense, everyone? And when I get all of my odd pages shot, I go back. I say OK to this. I go back to my set camera counter. And I set it up for now, page 22, or do you get where this is going? To shoot, so then I reload my camera to shoot all the even pages. And at the end of it all, they are all numbered correctly. Does that make sense to everyone, what I just went through? If you really want to screw somebody up in your life, if you're just that kind of person, and I know you all are secretly, even though you won't admit it, if you come in here and you actually do the set camera counter increment to 2, or set it to do something weird, set it to 7, then people will start shooting and they'll go frame number 1, frame 8, frame 15, it'll make no sense to them at all. Anyway, I'm going to set mine back to 1. Okay, couple of other things though that I want to put in here really fast as long as we're here. I'm going to keep next capture location in here. I'm also going to keep next capture adjustments. We'll talk about what all of those are later on. Camera I'm going to keep in here. Camera focus. I do not need to keep camera focus in here unless I'm working on a phase 1 camera, because that's the only camera that this software can actually control. It'll actually speak to the camera and change its focus. This does not work for Sony, Nikon, Canon, Nikon. It doesn't work for any of those. So I'm going to get rid of this guy again. Click on the little 3 arrows and remove this tool. The camera settings, if you drop this open, again, this only works on phase cameras. You can click on this to remove this tool as well. Overlay, we can keep in here. We'll talk about what overlay is later on. And then finally, Capture Pilot. Capture Pilot actually turns a local computer into a server, and people can connect to that server, and they can actually look at your captures on either an iPad, another computer, or a phone. And the beauty of that is that you can be shooting in the studio while your client is sitting in your ultimate lounge room sipping on cocktails, and they can watch your photo shoot happening on their phone. However, that's something that we're going to deal with at the very end of this class, so for the time being right now, we can get rid of it. So again, click on the little 3 tools and remove that tool. However, for you guys now, what tools do you like to have when you're actually shooting? Anyone? How about a focus check? Wouldn't that be nice? So we can add that. Come over to this area that's right underneath, hold down your control key, click on the drop-down menu, come down to Add Tool, and we're going to add Focus. This now gives us a focus check in this tab. So I can continue to work in my camera tab. I can watch and make sure that things aren't screwing up, but I can also check my focus. Does this make sense, everyone? There's another one that I like to have in here, and it's actually a way to check to see if you're able to recover blown out highlights while you're actually shooting. And that tool is, again, hold down your control key, click on the drop down menu. The one that you're going to actually add is highlights, high dynamic range. So in high dynamic range, you can actually see if we get to something here. Let's see if I can find an image that where something is actually blown out. Nope, because I only do perfect exposure. Oh, here, maybe. Maybe we could call these little edges maybe a little bit blown out. You'll see on this, so I've got frame number 2, you can grab your highlights and pull this guy in, and it starts to recover some tone in the background again. Unfortunately for you guys, I only do perfect work, so this won't help us out. Is this making sense, everyone? And then finally, the last thing I do want to add here that's really important to us, and we'll talk about what it is when we get to this. I just, again, want to show you. Hold down the control key, click on the drop down, and the tool we're going to add is base characteristics. The reason you want to add and deal with base characteristics is that this is where you can actually assign color profiles to the images that you've made. So this goes back to dealing with our whole color managed profile working system. Is this making sense to everyone right now? Finally, you can actually save. You can go through all of this work. Oh, you can move these guys around as well. So let's say you wanted to bring black and white into this. If you come up to the black and white tool tab, hold down the command key and click, you can move it around. So you can reorder these guys. So let's say I want to bring black and white part into here. That would be a part of it. However, realize that black and white, if you only need the basics of black and white, you can still, working here in your camera tab, you can collapse high dynamic range and you can collapse base characteristics. And right here underneath, you can hold down your control key and click, and the tool that you want to add is black and white, and it's sitting right here. And so now I've got an enable black and white that is in my camera tool tab. So even though I'm working here like this, I can enable black and white. It's just really fast for me. So the point that I'm trying to make is that these things are infinitely customizable. Does this make sense, everyone? Finally, you can actually save your workspaces because you don't want to have to rebuild these all the time. So when you get a workspace that you truly like, come up to the window menu, come down to Workspace, and come over to Save Workspace. And I'm going to name mine Verser 201910. Now, I'm just giving mine so it's a way I can distinguish it from anything else. If I were you guys, I would name it your name Capture, your name Process, your name whatever it is that you want to do. If you only use one workspace, it just can have your name. But go ahead and say Save to this, and then to find this thing, come out to your Finder. You need to get to your library. So again, library is not visible typically on any computer. Apple tries to hide it from everyone. To get to it, in the Finder, go to your Go menu and click on Go. You'll get a drop-down menu. You will not see library in there. However, again, depending on the computer you're on, you either hold down the Shift key or the Option key. One of those two, either Shift or Option, will give you library. Click on Library. It'll take you into this. Once you're in Library, go to Application Support. In Application Support, come down to, it is Capture One. Come into Capture One. Inside Application Support, Capture One, come down to Workspaces. And inside Workspaces, you will see the one that you just built. Mine is sitting right here, this 201910. Yes? No, here's the thing. This is what you want to do. Once you get Capture One all tricked out the way you like it, you copy this entire folder to a hard drive, because this will have custom styles in it for you, custom workspaces for you, custom naming conventions for you. Anything that you've done in Capture One is all saved in here. If you copy this folder, then all you need to do is put this folder in this same place on any other computer, and Capture One will be configured for you. Not just the workspace, this entire folder. So, because you want all this stuff in here. You want your recipes and your presets and your LCC profiles and all of this entire folder, you want the whole thing. If you only ever had done a custom workspace, the only file that you need is this file right here. But in most cases, people do a lot of customization. So if you buy presets from Capture One, this is where they get loaded. Does this make sense, everyone? Are there questions about this? Okay, guys, this seems like a good time to take a break. I've got 10 o'clock. If you guys could be back at 10 after, we have got an enormous amount we have got to get through today. Are there any questions about this so far? Are we good? All right. Did everybody get on the sign-in? It's right here.